Welcome back, everybody, to Testosterone Fantasy Sports. It is Week 8. We are in the studio Saturday night. The games happen tomorrow. Right now, we'd like to welcome a very esteemed guest, Eric Nelson, a regular here on the show now. Eric, thanks a lot for coming down,
Good to
man.
be in the house.
Yeah, we're glad to have
Breaking
you, man.
it down.
Most definitely. Well, we're breaking down the matchups, and now I know that you're not the biggest fantasy guy, but an excellent football mind nonetheless. And so we definitely want to get some of your take on what's going on in the NFL right now for these matchups we're going to break down. Because when it comes down to it, it's all about X's and O's, Eric. So I'd like to thank you again for coming on, man. And let's talk about Arizona at Carolina. Is Arizona for real right now this year, or do you think Carolina can hang strong in this game?
I think Arizona's close to getting over the hump, but I need proof. And this game would be close to the kind of proof I'm looking for. They travel cross country. They go to Charlotte. They're playing a good Carolina team, solid defensively, well coached by John Fox. But if you look at the history of the Arizona Cardinals, even this year, remember when they went to the Meadowlands and played the Jets? They gave up 6 touchdown passes to Brett Favre. Arizona's very good at home. I think they're starting to feel comfortable at their brand new venue, their University of Phoenix Stadium. But they need to win 2 to 3 road games. I think if Arizona can win 2, 3, 4 road games, the division is theirs. That's a mediocre NFC West. San Francisco is struggling. St. Louis has been struggling. And the Seattle Seahawks are on a free fall. Arizona gets a few road wins, holds serve at home. They can win the division, but this will be a challenge.
Most definitely. So if Arizona is going to be able to get the win here in this game, is it going to be Kurt Warner taking to the air, in your opinion? I know we're not going to have Anquan Bolden here in this game again. He's having to come back. They had to put pins in his face to get that thing looking right again. So you're not going to be able to have him in your lineup. But I know their running game has been decent, but do you think they'll have to take to the air to win here again?
Yeah, the Bolden loss is huge. I mean, between Bolden, Tim Hightower, and Larry Fitzgerald Jr., they had triple nickels, each guy with 5 touchdowns on the year. I think Arizona offensively is as good as you're going to see in the NFL. They're going to have to, I think, outscore Carolina. The problem is the Panthers play good defense. Arizona usually wins shootout games. You look at that Cowboy game, they won in overtime a few weeks ago. If somehow Arizona's defense can come out, keep Carolina to 20 or less, I like the Cardinals' chances. But this is going to be a challenge. I think the Carolina Panthers are a team that's a pretty good football club.
Yeah, they're good. They're going to try to win it on the ground, in my opinion. They like to use Jonathan Stewart between the tackles, D'Angelo Williams around the edge, but primarily they use their play-action pass to set up Steve Smith in the deep ball. Don't you think, Eric, that if it's a lower-scoring game, that plays more into the hands of the Panthers than it does the Arizona Cardinals?
Absolutely. I think the Cardinals certainly more suited to winning a shootout. The Panthers more suited to winning a slugfest. I would give the edge to Carolina because the game is in Charlotte, and Arizona has yet to prove to me they can win a big-time road game. But if the Cardinals get this one, I think they'll win the NFC West. I really do. Even though it would only be at the midpoint of the season, I think you could make that declaration because nobody in that division, with the exception of the Cardinals, is playing over 500.
Right. Yeah, this isn't your normal Cardinals. Heck, this isn't your father's Cardinals. Hey, this isn't your grandfather's Cardinals. This is a new and improved team in Arizona. Keep an eye on what's going on in the desert. Washington takes its game, high-powered offense, to Detroit, where the Lions showed up a little bit last weekend defensively, but they're not very good at all. Don't you think this could be one of the biggest blowouts of the week, Eric?
Certainly, potentially, it could be. I think the last time Washington lost to Detroit, the Edsel was just rolling up the assembly lines in the Motor City. It's been decades since the Lions have beaten the Redskins. Now, the game's at Ford Field. Detroit, the last couple of weeks, has at least shown a pulse. They really should have beat the Vikings. Got a bad call from the Zebra late, the referee, Tony Corrente. And then last week, they go down to Houston. I know the Texans had the lead built up, but the Lions fought back, made it a 7-point game. But I still think Washington needs to figure out a way to somehow win this game if they're going to be the serious challenger that they think they are. Jason Campbell potentially could have good numbers. I think the Lions on defense are average to below average. Clinton Portis certainly has been a monster this year. This should be Washington's game to win, but you know what? One of these weeks, the Lions are going to win.
Yeah, eventually it's got to happen. I don't see it happening here either. Washington, to me, is a definite playoff contender. They're working it out of the best division in the NFL, and I think if they lose, it's going to be a big black eye on their team. So, Jim Zorn's going to have his squad ready to go. You're going to want to start both Santana Moss and Clint Portis definitely. And aside from Calvin Johnson, I think you want to bench all the rest of your Detroit Lions. Hopefully you don't have too many investments in them. But let's talk for just a moment on Calvin Johnson. He's a major playmaker. Now the Lions have traded Roy Williams. Washington comes in. They've got a good but not great secondary. Do you think Calvin Johnson could find some room to work here?
Sure. I mean, as you said, he's a playmaker. He's an impact guy. He's in year number 2. The reason we don't know more about him is because in Detroit, you tend to go MIA. I
Sure.
mean, you're on a milk carton. You're invisible. The team loses so much. Very few games on national TV. Heck, they're hardly even on regional TV. So Calvin Johnson's a guy that he might get loose, might wiggle free down the middle. I think he's a guy who's just getting better. Mm-hmm. But the Detroit Lions right now, to me, they're still a team that they're trying to find their way. It's pretty clear that Rod Marinelli's not going to survive this.
Right.
So the players know deep down there will be probably yet another coaching change. They did tell Matt Millen to hit the road, and that was one positive step. But they have a long way to go. And, you know, Dan Orlovsky, he thought he was playing in the CFL a few weeks ago against the Vikings. He ran out of the end zone.
Right, yeah. He's brought new term to the whole Polish jokes that go around with the last name Orlovsky and whatnot. So I think Detroit could do a little bit better than that. St. Louis going to New England. You know, St. Louis really got off the schneid in a big way. The last couple of weeks they've beaten the Redskins. Now they've beaten Dallas. What's going on in St. Louis? They all of a sudden have an offense.
Yeah, first of all, let's squelch all that talk that the NFC East is the best division in the history of the NFL, because with Dallas and Washington losing the last couple of weeks to St. Louis, I think we're finding out that maybe we jumped the gun there. But, you know, obviously the easy thing to say is the coaching change. Scott Linehan, you guys talked about it earlier with Jesse. He wasn't getting the job done. He had benchmarked Bulger, and Steven Jackson came out and said, wait a minute, this is our meal ticket. Why are you sitting him down? So Linehan loses his job. The first thing Jim Haslett does is put Bulger back in as the starter. Steven Jackson had a great game last week. I mean, the St. Louis Rams really punched the Dallas Cowboys in the mouth. Remember, if you go back to the beginning of 2007, some people thought the Rams were a Super Bowl contender. That's not that long ago. There still is talent in St. Louis, and Jim Haslett had success in New Orleans, took some teams to the playoffs. This might be one of those moves where the Cardinals can get off the mat and make a run. If the Cardinals of Arizona fall back to the pack and the St. Louis Rams get hot, there could be a race in the NFC West, but I don't think they're going to win this one. By the way, it's a rematch of Super Bowl 37.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to be interesting. It is in New England. Another bright spot for St. Louis in last weekend's game was the emergence of Donnie Avery. Go ahead and take a look on your waiver wire because he'd be a great addition to your team. He's a rookie wide receiver, so normally those guys take their time to develop, but he caught a touchdown. He's getting targeted quite often in their offense, and I think that he could pay dividends in the next few weeks for your team. So you see that a lot when teams start to build a little bit of momentum, positive things continue, and they are a better team than they were under Scott Linehan, make no mistake, but they face the Patriots. Patriots are looking much better. I think Matt Castle is another buy low kind of a player that you can go after and get. He's got a nice connection with Randy Moss. Now, it wasn't until Champ Bailey went down with the groin injury on Monday night that Randy really did his damage. But I'll tell you that I think that Matt Castle is getting the reps that he needs, the experience that he needs, so that when the later on in the season comes and the must-win games happen and they go to the playoffs, it's going to mean good things for them. Eric, am I totally off base with that thought process, or do you think that is New England the potential playoff team?
Well, I think you're right on the button with your assessment of Castle. And I watched the Monday night game, and they dominated Denver. Now, let's not forget they lost Rodney Harrison, Sammy Morris, who was in for Lawrence Maroney. They lose him as well. But the thing about Castle, first of all, look at the guy he had to replace. We're talking about a living legend, the icon Tom Brady, 3-time Super Bowl winner, been in 4 Super Bowls. So that's a huge challenge right off the top. Then you look at Matt Castle's resume. Until this year, had not started a game since high school in Southern California. Backed up Carson Palmer, Matt Leinart at USC, Tom Brady in New England. He's just getting his feet wet. He's just learning the system. And I think the upside for Matt Castle is huge. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be Brady, but he should only get better. And he does have a guy by the name of Randy Moss, who, contrary to some reports, is still interested. And I think Moss is now more mature than he used to be. And I think he realizes he can bring up Matt Castle by going out there and giving the effort he needs to be. So I think the Patriots clearly are still in the mix. Bill Belichick, defensively, he had 2 weeks to prepare for the Broncos. They had lost 3 in a row to Denver, counting playoffs. And he laid in the weeds for Jay Cutler, and you saw what they did, a near shutout. Yeah,
it really was close to a shutout, and for all intents and purposes, for the important part of the game, it really was. I would like to mention for one moment the Super Freak. You know, here at Testosterone Sports, we have huge Purple Hearts, and at one point in the game, Randy Moss caught a touchdown, and I'm not sure if you saw the play. I sure did, but there was a Viking in the stands, and this guy had on the horns, the whole outfit. He had the tattoos, he kept flexing, he had the chainmail on, and Randy leapt up into his arms, and you could feel the love through the television and the embrace that Randy had with this Viking guy, just like a symbol that Randy left his heart in Minnesota. And I just want to let you know out there, Randy, when you sit down to watch Testosterone Sports, that our hearts beat heavily. Randy, we love you, man. We love seeing what you're doing, and we'll never forget your days here in Minnesota. They were the best. So
Jeff, they could have made a run to get him back.
I know.
Before the 07 season. Obviously, he was on the market. Brett Favre was lobbying for the Packers to go out and get him, and they never went down that road. Now, why Minnesota didn't give the Raiders a call? Because if all it was going to take was a fourth-round pick, you do that deal yesterday.
Yeah.
Give New England credit. They're the ones who pulled the trigger.
Yeah, he is the love we lost, and I can sense the sorrow in your voice, man. Well, it just brings a tear to my eye.
He's a human highlight film.
To my heart. So one final thing on New England, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but there is a running back by the name of Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. He's the man with 4 names. He's a rookie running back. They gave the ball to him late. Sammy Morris did come down with a knee injury in that game. All they really have left now without Lawrence Maroney is Lamont Jordan and Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. He ran with passion. He ran with fire. He ran very hard. He laid some licks, didn't take them, and I think he makes a great waiver wire acquisition in your league. Go ahead and pick him up if you've got some running back depth issues. He should be a developer, but decent, and he could be the kind of guy who kind of comes on a la Ryan Grant from last year. So take a look at the man with 4 names. That's Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. Off to cherry old England, but San Diego Chargers, that's right. They're going across the pond to play in London against New Orleans Saints. It's going to be a very, very interesting game there. Not only are they meeting across the Atlantic Ocean, Eric, but also this is going to be the first time that Drew Brees has had a chance to stick it to his old mates. So what do you think? Do you think Drew Brees will be eating tea and crumpets today or in that game or what?
I would say that the edge here probably goes to New Orleans because the Chargers, when you get them out of Southern California, they're a different team. But then again, the Saints aren't exactly world beaters on the road. You know, even though New Orleans is considered the home team, it's clearly a neutral site game. So I don't know if you can figure out what to expect here. From San Diego's standpoint, they play a game last week in Buffalo. San Diego to Buffalo, air miles, it's roughly 3,000, give or take. A couple of hundred on either side of 3,000. Then they got to go back to San Diego and get themselves to London. I mean, that's a lot of travel time for San Diego. So this one's tough to figure out. I mean, the Dolphins played there last year against the Giants. Giants won, and the Giants went on to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying the winner of this game is going to win the Super Bowl, but it would be a huge win for whoever can get it because you do not want to go to England. You're going through all this pomp and circumstance this week. Tea and crumpets, as you mentioned, changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace, talking to the Queen and all that good stuff, seeing the old videos of Princess Di back in her heyday.
And the weather is always great this time of year over there, so that could play a definite factor. I mean, if there's freezing rain, like there was last year in the Giants Miami
and the Saints
game.
Are a dome team, and the Chargers are a California team. So
here's one other big factor. If Reggie Bush were going to play in this game, I would think that the Saints had a major edge, but he had knee surgery, and although it was successful, he's going to miss at least 4 weeks from what I've been told, and so I think that that's a major loss of weapon for their offense. Now they do get back a more healthy Jeremy Shockey, had 50 yards last weekend, should be good for a similar number this weekend. Still looking for him to get into the end zone, but Marcus Colston makes his return as well. Both of those players are going to be easing their way back into the rhythm, but I think without Reggie Bush, they're going to have to rely on their stars a little bit more. So the lack of Reggie Bush in that game makes me really wonder if they're going to have what it takes to win. And, San Diego, they pretty much have been playing almost, it seems, without LT. Is he going to step forward at some point, or do you think that toe is something that could be worse than we're being told to believe?
I really believe for a running back, a toe injury is almost as bad as a knee injury because every time you take a step or you run, you feel the pain. And, LT, I think he's a tough guy, despite what people said last year in that playoff game against New England when he was on the bench. Now, I think LT has, got the heartbeat. He's got the passion for the game. But, man, your feet, your toes, your knees, I mean, that's really the engine that drives any great running back. So until it's 100%, we may not see the LT we're used to. I think really these two teams are the classic underachievers of each conference.
Sure.
And I think the good folks in the United Kingdom should ask for a refund. The Saints have not lived up to billing, and the Chargers, with all that talent, still floundering, still wondering,
Sure.
how good are the Chargers?
Yeah, right. And nobody really knows right now because you can't get a good feel from them week in and week out. They're a different team. Last week they went up to Buffalo and looked fairly poor, I thought. Now, that makes a great segue in our show. Buffalo traveling to Miami. It's going to be an interesting game as well. All of a sudden, the division that looked like it wasn't going to be very good, a couple of teams are stepping forward. Buffalo and Miami both are great stories for the 2008 season. Buffalo off to the hot start, Miami with the Wildcat. Eric, I'd be really interested in getting your take on the Wildcat itself, and specifically one question I have is I've been wondering this in my mind, is Ronnie Brown as good or possibly the next LT?
Well, he's very good. I'm not going to call him the next LT yet. He's got to do it a little bit longer for me to lump him in with LT. But, we talked about the Wildcat, UI and Yeasty, on WCCO a week ago when you guys came down to our spacious radio studios. Right. And it's really an intriguing thing. And Bill Parcells now sits on top of the food chain there in Miami, and then you have Tony Sperano and that group. And it's kind of interesting to see Bill Parcells' fingerprints on the Wildcat, but it really makes defenses now plan for something they never thought they'd have to even worry about. Guarantee you the Buffalo Bills have now looked at that Wildcat a lot this week, and they're trying to figure out a way to make sure Ronnie Brown doesn't go off. I'm just wondering, hey, are we going to see Marshawn Lynch in it? Can you turn the tables? Even if you run it 3 times a game, give the other guy something to think about. It's just a direct snap to guys like Marshawn Lynch, or I think the Minnesota Vikings might want to try it with Adrian Peterson.
I know. How nice would that be to have Tavares Jackson split out as our wide receiver? We could run a little reverse, hand him the ball, and let him throw it to Shanko or Berrien down the field. But we got to digress back into this matchup really quick. Ronnie Brown is a must-start fantasy football-wise. Definitely keep him in your lineup all the time, no matter what. Buffalo, a big surprise on the season. You can start Marshawn Lynch each and every week. Same thing with Lee Evans. He's a great play. Trent Edwards definitely coming around. Eric, my final question for you in this segment. Do you think Buffalo is for real? This big hot start that they came out with, they had a couple struggles, dealt with some adversity, but last week felt like a real statement game. They really handed it to San Diego, 20-13, I think was the final score of that game. Is this the team of the year? Could this be the team that goes to the playoffs, maybe even goes to the AFC Championship game or the Super Bowl?
I think the Buffalo Bills, if they stay healthy, will definitely be in the mix. New England's going to make a run, but they're not the Patriots that we know, because missing Tom Brady and having these injuries has certainly set them back. But I think the Buffalo Bills have been gathering young talent now for a few years, and it's all starting to develop, and these guys are getting better at the same time. Yeah, I think the Buffalo Bills are for real. They just have to stay healthy. And, they may come back to the pack a bit. There may be a losing streak of 2 games in there somewhere. But I think they're going to hold serve at home. And, again, like I said about the Arizona Cardinals, win your home games, or 7 of them, 6 of them minimum, and then get 3 or 4 on the road. There's 9, 10 wins. Probably gets you into the postseason.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, to honor one of my favorite sportscasters, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. And right now they're circled, the guns are firing off, and all the engines are pretty much dead. So invest in the Bills if you can. Play them all with confidence. You'll appreciate the dividends. I'd like to thank you very much, Eric, for coming on to this segment of the matchups. We'll be right back. We've got Zach and Jesse in the house. Break down another segment. This is Testosterone Fantasy Football Week 8, and we're rolling on it. We'll be right back. Bye.